The problem with big buildings is that they are heavy. Without steel to hold them up, the Romans had to use natural power. They used arches in many of their large buildings and aqueducts. Arches, for some reason a mathematician could probably explain, can hold a very high amount of weight without breaking, way more than a square or rectangle. Their buildings were done so well that many still stand today, and some of the bridges are even still used. The crown jewel of Roman architecture was the Colosseum. It was truly the world's first stadium. Even today the Colosseum is an amazing sight to see, but back then it must have absolutely stunned those who saw it. How could a building so massive even stand? Check out the statues in every archway and the cloth roof. It held over 30,000 people, had even had running water throughout. Way to go, Romans. Here's the inside of the building. I know it looks pretty trashed, but that's just because it is missing a major piece. You see, the floor of the Colosseum actually covered up an entire underground section. While the people in the stands were enjoying the show, they had no idea what was going on underground to make it happen. These underground sections allowed for some surprising special effects as well. As you can see, they had cages and ramps underground. Using these, they could make it look like wild animals were appearing out of nowhere into the battles. We'll talk more about the battles later, but just imagine you were a poor Roman living outside the city, and then coming in one day to see all of this going on. You would have been truly proud to be a Roman. Another area where Rome made amazing technical advances was medical care. Roman medical technology was largely lost after Rome was defeated, and it took Europe over 1,000 years to get back to the level of Rome. That's how advanced they truly were. So, let's see what they could do.
The treatment involved a doctor laying out his patient on a bed called the Hippocratic bench, named after its inventor, the great Greek doctor Hippocrates. The bed was designed to stretch the patient's body. He was strapped into the device using soft leather bindings. His legs were then raised and stretched using a handle which pulled the bones, ligaments, and tendons. It might look like a medieval torture instrument, but in fact it's not very different from traction beds used in modern hospitals today. Instead of wood and leather, we use metal and plastics, but the theory is the same. Using tension to align broken or dislocated bones ensured they set straight and the athlete fully recovered. For those who could not afford Galen, a far worse fate awaited. This skeleton from a poor Roman grave shows a typical broken leg bone, which fused in an incorrect position. Galen's patients would have been far more fortunate.
So, you're not impressed? Well, you should be. That was pretty awesome. But that isn't all the Romans did. They built full-sized hospitals to separate those with different ailments. There is some evidence they even did brain surgery. We know for sure they did eye surgery. Check this out.
Steady hand were always called for in the case of one of the most incredible operations carried out during the Roman period, eye surgery. Romans, like us today, could suffer from cataracts, a clouding of the lens in the eye that can lead to blindness. But also, like us, they had a cure, a delicate operation.
Cataract operations seem to be common. It's a very simple operation in which you put a very thin needle into the eye and flip over the lens. And we've got lots of instruments, mainly from France, but elsewhere in the Roman Empire, that seem to show that this was a common procedure.
The technique known as couching involved the use of a very fine needle. Surgeons would expertly insert the needle into the back of the eye to remove the cataract. One slip could have caused permanent blindness. In some developing countries today, the technique of couching is carried out in exactly the same way as it would have been by Roman doctors. A unique find in Montbellier, France, has revealed an even more advanced technique in ancient eye surgery.
These instruments were found in a bronze tube on the bed of the River Saône, so they're very well preserved. And as well as 3 solid cataract couching needles, there are 2 needle syringes.
These amazingly delicate syringes were at first a mystery. It was only when the tools were X-rayed that their secret was revealed. Using these radiographs, modern eye surgeons could then begin to explain what they were for.
This is an even more sophisticated instrument, and it's a very cunning piece of design in that it's a hollow instrument with a introducer. So with this, it would be a more sophisticated operation of being able to enter the lens itself, and then the surgeon would remove the needle from within inside and be able to suck the lens contents out through the small port.
Next we are going to take a look at society. Society is a bit hard to define as a topic. The best way to explain it is the things normal people in the civilization did on a regular basis. It is made up of culture, religion, entertainment, and many other things. To help explain it a little better, think about these questions. What makes an American an American? It is more than just living here. We have a definite set of characteristics that make us American. From the language we speak to the movies we like, it is pretty easy to define an American. But what about a Californian? We love the beach and say dude all the time, right? It sure isn't like that in most other states. Finally, what about age differences? How is your culture different from your parents? Do you watch the same shows? Listen to the same music? If you think about all the things put together that make us who we are, that is culture and that is society. The order of rank in society is called the social structure. This is sort of a weird concept to us, because we really don't have one. We separate a bit, based on how much money you have, but we all follow the same laws and the government treats us the same way. In most ancient cultures, though, different ranks had different privileges. In Rome their leader was called an emperor, and he had complete control. There was a group of senators who gave him ideas, but it was the emperor who made all final decisions. Anyone who was a citizen had many rights and instant respect. The goal of anyone living in the empire was to become a citizen. If you weren't a citizen, especially if you were a slave, you had few rights and very little protection. Here's an example of the importance of citizenship. This is the story of Paul from the book of Acts in the Bible. Paul was arrested by Jewish leaders for preaching religion to anyone he met, even non-Jews, which was illegal at the time. The Jews arrested him and took him to the Roman authorities for punishment. He was taken to the Roman commander of the city and beaten, so he'd confess his crime. Paul then asked the guy, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't been found guilty?" At this point the commander didn't believe Paul. He didn't look rich or anything, so he asked him how he could possibly be a citizen. Paul says his parents were citizens, and so he was born as one. The commander realized he was in big trouble and he immediately let Paul go. For all he knew, Paul was a murderer. That didn't matter though, he had beaten a citizen and that was a serious crime. Being a citizen of Rome was awesome.